All right, folks. I think it's 5 o'clock. So we have from 5 to 7. Should be enough time. A couple things. I want to thank Trustee Carroll. He sitting over here. This was a lot of work that you did to make this all happen. It looks nice, and it is nice, and it looks easy, but it wasn't. I see board members. We invited all the boards, planning board, zoning board, school board, town board, village board. Members are here for each. It's rough. It's rough. It's a Friday night. The folks that know me know I don't do Friday night meetings. I'm here on it. I want to, I didn't say that. Chris Deacus is here. Chris is our assemblyman. Chris, raise your hand. I want to introduce Matthew. He's going to come up in a second. As soon as I get done, it will be on in a couple seconds. He's the director of services for James Schoolfist. So he's going to come up just for a couple minutes. And later on in the presentation, there'll be a slide with an email. I set up an email. This meeting is being taped. It will go on the village website Monday, and at the same spot on the village website will be an email that you can type in for questions, comments. You want to make a comment, you want to have a question, and they'll all be answered by the person who can answer them the best. Whether it's myself, whether it's the AOG, whether it's Thayer, whether it's one of the planning boards or zoning boards, they'll all be answered. Give it time, but they'll all be answered, okay? So in a little bit, it'll come up. If you have a pen, that's it, write it down, okay? And if not, it's available by the village hall for call. Okay, Matthew, I'll say a few words. Maybe you can do it from there. I don't know. Is that on?
Hello? So good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Scaldi. I am Director of Constituent Services to the Office of James Schoolfist. As one concerned Schoolfist had a prior family commitment tonight. They did ask that I join you to share some information on our ongoing local involvement to ensure that Pine Falls not only recovers and falls from last year's devastation, but also evolves to meet the needs of residents, to assist residents in the future. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Sure. Anyway, continuing, in the wake of last year's flood event, our office adopted 3 primary goals in assisting Highland Falls. Firstly, helping relay information to our constituents in response to their inquiries. Secondly, using our platform to remind the governor and state agencies what Highland Falls needs and deserves. Thirdly, pushing for more funding that adequately meets those needs. If you never hear me, just check in. Awesome.
I heard that part.
Yeah, Mayor has his ears up. And look, clearly there's still work that needs to be done, but it's important to know that our team remains engaged and committed to the community recovery. We've also, and this is a big announcement we want to make, we've also advanced grant funding for Highland Falls Police Department, the library, HFFM, and the village overall. And these services are designed to help the community feel like itself again after this last turbulent year. As we look to the future, there are 2 key projects that Schoolfist has been eyeing. So number 1, rehabilitation of the long vacant Highland Falls Elementary School. This is something that the center recently revisited at length, both with the school district as well as the West Point Association for Graduates. And secondly, the potential for expanded ferry service linking West Point, the broader community, and the Ocean train station. Highland Falls and Highlands are both wonderful communities, which we are privileged to represent. But as a reminder, our team includes dedicated staff to assist with any constituent concerns or questions, and we welcome your outreach. And I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak and for this engagement.
First off, I want to thank everybody for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and it's great to see that the assemblyman is here, and we have other representation, and the community's here, the planning review board's here, the building inspector's here. So it's a great group of folks that have come, demonstrating an interest in your community and what's happening here in Highland Falls. My name is Rick Minicosi. I'm a developer here in Highland Falls, and I was afforded the opportunity from the village board of trustees to visit with each of you tonight to present to you what I think would be a great vision for Highland Falls, and to talk about where we are currently and where we can go and how we can go. This map right here is a map of the existing zoning here in Highland Falls. And so there's different colors on the map. The projector is obviously changing the coloration a little bit, so I apologize about that. But we're going to talk about 3 different districts, zoning districts in the village that we're really focusing on. Those are the ones where the development opportunities really exist. The first of which is right here at the West Point Thayer gate. Everything you see here in what is red, it looks like maroon here, is called the B3 district. That's the B3 business district. Everything you see in pink here, all the way down this way, that is the B1 district, which is the business 1 district. Okay? Everything you see in this dark orange section is the R5 district. The R5 district, you see this is orange, but it differs from the dark orange here. This is light orange. So the R5 is this section here, here. This parcel right here, and this parcel right here. Those are the only R5 districts in the village of Highland Falls. Okay? So, okay.
Can you tell us what R5 and R3 and whatever that means?
So R stands for residential. There's different R ratings. R1 is single family, R2 might be up 2 family, R5 is apartments. So each R stands for residential or residential. B stands for business. And so that's it. Okay. Let's see. So I think this is now right here, right? So we're probably right about there. Is that right? All the way down a little bit. It's over on there. Where's the school? This one right here. So, a great community is one where you can live, work, and play. And that is actually the mantra for the Mid-Hudson Valley Regional Economic Development Committee. Their whole mantra is live, work, and play. Highland Falls, known as Hometown USA. A fabulous place, historical background, right on the doorstep of one of the top 5 attractions in the state of New York, West Point. These are the goals, the 3 goals for the village of Highland Falls that were developed by your leaders as part of the New York Forward program, the grant that the village received to attract West Point tourists and visitors from the West Point community and nearby natural and historic sites such as Bear Mountain to Main Street. Bring people who are here onto Main Street. Cultivate a diverse and sustainable mixed-use downtown corridor and thriving small businesses and reactivated storefronts. We all know that there's a lot of storefronts on Main Street and throughout the community that are not active. They need to be renovated, they need to be energized in order to achieve that bullet point. Sorry about that. Activate downtown with inviting streetscapes, public spaces, and amenities to encourage people to stay and explore. I was driving in yesterday, and I actually looked at the meeting off of the highway, and Main Street, there's really some really neat things in there, right? And they're just not standing out. There's wonderful things that sit between the median of the highway and Main Street. Property taxes. How many people in here, raise your hand please, are homeowners, or property owners? How many people are paying a lot of taxes? Raise your hands. Okay, outstanding. In the room, I'd like to know how many people work for the village? Only one. Okay, how many people work in the village? Are employed in the village? About 12, 13 people in the room. Okay, thank you for that. Property taxes. Property taxes in the village, when you take in consideration the village, the town, the school, the county, is about 4%. Okay, 4%. There's this great law here that's called the New York 2% cap rate, which only allows for a village's budget to go up 2% per year. And I believe that the budget for the property taxes levy was $3.5 million last year. And it was a 5.799% increase from the prior year, but that was because of the flood and all of the requirements that the mayor and his team put into place in order to get the community back into a working order for them. But that's the budget right there, is $3.54 billion. And the most it's supposed to go up in any year is 2%. Okay? So 2% of $3.5 billion, I think, is about $70,000, I think, in my head. So it's about $70,000. Okay, so the goal is to develop the properties that are in the village and let the developers who develop the new properties pay the lion's share of the taxes, so that way you, the citizens of Highland Falls, can have a tax break. Your taxes could go down. You put more disposable cash in your pockets to go and enjoy the newly added amenities to the village and get to live, work, and play in the community. Tax rate in the village, this is the village tax rate, is 0.01156. So whatever your assessed value on your piece of property is, multiply it times that number, and that's how much you're paying in the village, your portion of the village taxes. Remember, this number can only go up by $70,000 by law. So $70,000 means that it will go to about $3,610,000 next year. Okay? That'll be the tax levy for the village. Take a look at an example of how development in the community can change your tax bill. Take an example. The former Penn-Fed American Burrito site, the current value is $584,000 on the tax roll. The amount being paid to the village is $6,756 a year. Build a hotel at that same site, and it's even if it's assessed at $20 million, that hotel will pay $231,370 a year, up from $6,756. That delta reduces that number, which is the pool that you all pay into, which means your tax rate could go down and your village taxes could go down, as well as all of your other taxes, because those are pools as well. So if there's development to turn $500,000 properties into multi-million-dollar properties, those developers and business owners will be paying tax. Zoning map. We already went through the zoning map, so we kind of saw this slide already. There's two types of development that I want to talk about that are primarily fitting for the B1 and the B3 district. Okay? R5 on its own is just apartments, so we leave it at that. But a mixed-use development is basically a development that provides some sort of revenue-generating space on the first floor, and it has dwelling units above it. And that revenue-generating space can be restaurants, or it can be shops, or drinking places, or whatever it might be. But it has to have some sort of revenue-generating space as well. And then there's a mixed-use hotel, and that's basically very similar to this. It's a hotel instead of condominiums or apartments above it, right? And the space below it doesn't necessarily have to be restaurants, it doesn't have to be office space or whatever you might want it to be, but it can't be dwelling space. Okay? Talk about off-street requirements, okay? So you saw that the red, I pointed out on that first slide, the red district is right here at Thayer Gate, right? Where your Shades is, and Park Restaurant, all those things. And we've got on-street parking there, right? We've got a bunch of parking meters are there. And how frequently you see those parking meters being used by anyone, right? Spaces are almost always vacant. So it's not a big revenue generator for the community. The mayor was telling me, and so was Todd the other day, that they're trying to put an initiative together to see if we can get one-way traffic in that area. So that way it's one-way traffic going down Main Street one way, and then one-way traffic coming up the highway going the other way. We could really use some state assistance on that. That's something we could really use your help in trying to achieve that. But what that would do is it forces everybody who's coming off West Point, who's heading south, to go right down the corridor where your jewelry shop is, where your paint store is, where your ice cream store is, where your restaurant is. They're going to come right past it instead of dropping down into the highway and going right past the West Point Museum and all that area, and just bypassing all the opportunities to engage the community in commerce. Okay? So, there's off-street parking requirements right now that kind of makes things a little bit difficult for developers, and I'll show you in a little bit what that's about. But hotel use requires one parking space per guest bedroom, and that is needed. There's no doubt about it. That is a great rule that should stay in place. It's well thought out, because you got to have, as a hotel operator, you have to have parking for your guests. Otherwise, you have all kinds of guest service. So that's really, really good. Mixed-use development requires one parking space per dwelling, but it also requires one parking space for every 2 employees that are working in the storefronts that are all on the first floor. Okay? So, we go back to this slide right here, which is the zoning map. I'm going to do this better. Okay, so, it's a little off script, but I want to point this out. Okay, so everybody knows what's here, right? Coming down here, here's Drew Ave, this is Shades Park Restaurant. Right down here, you got Southgate. And so you know what restaurants you have here, okay? So my point is there's a lot of retail already here. How long are these stores staying vacant before they're getting leased? And then you're coming downtown here because as you move back down into the downtown area right here, you know there's some storefronts that are underutilized. They stay vacant for a while, then they rent. Unfortunately, right now we've got a lot of it filled. The point of what I'm telling you is that any development that happens here, all along all this pink corridor, right now, according to the zoning laws, means that the entire first floor of every single one of those developments has to be retail. Do you know how many stores that's going to be? That's a lot of stores. And so we're going to have an oversupply of stores that are going to be underutilized and are going to be vacant, or the people who are currently using stores on Main Street are going to go to the brand new built stores and move their businesses off of Main Street so there's a threat there. So we have to think that through a little bit more clearly in regard to what is the requirement for a mixed-use development in order to have the appropriate amount of retail space. We don't want to overbuild. And ultimately, really what it comes down to is the developer who's investing their resources into developing that asset is going to do a market research. And they're going to have a full understanding of what the community needs based on that research. And they should really be able to build what they think is going to be the best opportunity for their investment to get a return that will deliver the best value to the community in order to have that live, work, play environment. Height allowance. The B3 district, I'm not going to go back there and put it on, but that's the red area over here, right? It's allowed to have 60 feet. If you have 60 feet, there's an opportunity to have a bonus floor, and that's another 10 feet. If you offset it off the edges of the building on all sides, you push it back so that way it's not seen from the street, such that when you're looking at it, you can't see it. Then you get that bonus. So that's 60 feet in the B3. In the B1 district, which is all that pink district that you saw, the building height is 50 feet. Okay, so this is already established. This is already in the zoning law, and those are excellent heights. In fact, the hotel that's on Main Street, which you'll see in a little bit, is already approved by the Planning Review Board. It's already entitled. We just need to get a building permit in order to start building that, and that is a 75-foot structure, if I recall, 60 feet plus the 15 bonus. So there's already a building that's going to be downtown on Main Street that size. And so as you build other buildings, what you don't want to do is have them dwarfed, right? You don't want to have a 60-foot building, then you have a 30-foot requirement where everything else is 30 feet. It will look odd. You want to have some sort of symmetry, and not every building will be 50 feet, not every building will be 40 feet. You'll have 60, 50, 45, 38. It'll be a whole array of different sizes of buildings, and that's going to be based on the piece of land that the developer has to work with. And you'll see that here a little bit later as we move down. Lot area per dwelling. This is a very important slide. So, how many of you have heard, oh, let's make B3 2,500, let's make it 1,500, let's make it 850 by raising hands? Has anybody heard these things? Okay. Does anybody have a full grasp of what that means outside of the planning review board and or anybody else on the board? Anybody else have a strong sense of what that means? Well, let me tell you what it means. It means that in order to build one dwelling unit, apartment, condominium, whatever it might be, that's going to be off on your 4 floors, you have to have 2,500 square feet of land space. Okay? And you'll see this in a matrix I'm going to show you in a second. In 1 acre of land, there's about 43,000 square feet, which allows for you to build 17 units. Okay? So, how many 1 acre pieces of land are there in the village of Highland Falls? Probably maybe 10. I don't know how many there are. There's not many. There's not many that are in the B1, B3 district. I would say there's probably less than maybe 5 that are there already. So it's a very, very high bar to achieve, 2,500 square feet. It's an inability for a developer to come in and say, for instance, and you'll hear this from AOG, but for shades, for instance, Nick, what's the square footage? 4,200. How many units can you get on there right now with 2,500? 1 apartment unit above shades. How many are there now? 4. It's out of code. It's out of zoning law. Almost every building on Main Street is out of zoning law, out of zoning code. So that's what this 2,500 square feet, 1,500 square feet, 850 means. It's just called density. It's a matter of how many units can you build in one building based on the amount of land that you have. Which kind of contradicts a little bit about the fact that you already have established heights, right? So if you have an established height on his land, is he going to build a 60-foot building to put 4 apartments in? Absolutely not. He can't do it. And if you look at every single lot on Main Street, and we're going to do that here in a second, I'll put those, you'll see how tiny every single lot is. The only way you really get an opportunity to do that is when you conjoin lots. Which means you've got to buy 4 or 5 lots, you've got to put them into one parcel, and then you have a bigger piece of land. And the opportunity to really get to 1 acre, I can tell you, is a pretty high bar to achieve. That are contiguous lots, meaning they abut up to one another and not separated across the street or on an angle from one another. So that is a very, very important thing. What is even more interesting is that in R5, which is our apartments, it's 5,000 square feet. How many times does 5,000 go into 43,000? 8, and a little bit of a decimal. You could build 8 units on a 1 acre lot. If you want to know an idea what a 1 acre lot is, it's basically the lot where the Penn Fed and American Burrito building used to be across from McDonald's. That's 1 acre. So you could buy all those buildings, conjoin all those lots together, and then knock it down, pay for all the abatements, all the demolition, and then build 8 apartment units. Who thinks that'll happen? Right? It's never going to happen. And if we have these sorts of rules, then you will see status quo in this village forever. Because there's an inability. There's no, unless you've got the most philanthropic person in the world, and Elon Musk was here today, and I think we asked him if he'll do it, and he said no. But anyway, you get it. Okay. So R5 is definitely, I don't know how they came up with 5,000, that was legacy from the 1800s. Minimum required floor area per apartment or dwelling or unit. We are putting restrictions on a developer on what they can build, instead of allowing developers to determine what the market needs. Okay? By raising hand, I don't know, Anybody out there would love to have a 500 square foot studio apartment in Highland Falls that's their own, they can call it their own? There you go, there you go, right? Can't do it. Can't do it, zoning law doesn't allow you to do it. Max Falls, you can get a 750. You know what that does to your rent? Makes it a lot more sense. Right? So, don't restrict people, don't restrict Nick in his building to build however many units he's going to say. He said they all have to be 750 square feet or bigger, because he may do an economic analysis of this. I'd like to have 3 studios at 500, I'd like to have 2 one-bedroom 650 square foot apartments, I'd like to have 2 1,000 square foot, and I'd like to have 3 1,500 square foot 3-bedroom apartments. And then as a developer, he gets to determine what the market needs. Right? He's going to spend money doing the market analysis, and it's going to tell him to do one thing, and then these zoning laws are going to tell him to do another thing, and then he can't do it. And so that basically inhibits him from being able to do what he wants to do as an investor. Current status on Main Street, okay? So we kind of all have an idea of what Main Street looks like. It's gotten better over the last 10 years for sure, right? The streetscape has gotten better. Everything's getting better at the farmer's market. People are putting money into buildings. Buildings are coming down. So we're definitely on an upward trajectory of improving things. It's not happening as fast as anybody would like. A lot of economic situations in the world that have created the scenario where it's not a perfect development environment. But things are moving along. People are making investments in the community, and land is being owned and positioned so that way, if and when timing is right, the economic conditions are right, we can actually start to build and make Highland Falls what we all want to do. Okay, so thank you for hearing what I had to say about all that, but I thought that before I show you what my next thing is that you should all be kind of familiar with what it is now, what the challenges of what it is now is, and how we can potentially move and change. I normally will wait to give you the fun stuff until the very end and make you drag you through all the mud first until you get to have your reward, right? But I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a vision of kind of what it could look like, and then we'll talk about how. Okay? So this is right in West Point. All right, the West Point Hotel is right here. Okay. This is a great piece of land leads down to the other apartments down this way. So what can Highland Falls look like? Okay? How can we really portray the idea of hometown USA? How can we really portray the fact that this historic site, Fort Montgomery, is historic, Highland Falls is historic, West Point is historic, George Washington had his encampment there, right? I mean, so this is key to the birth of our country. How about it look like this instead? Big arch, Highland Falls, apartment buildings, as soon as you come in. Apartment buildings on this side, beautiful streetscape coming down. Welcome, you are here. Very different than where we're at right now. Let's go down the street a little bit. Okay, let's turn this into this, right? Pretty up the stone walls, and just so you know, for your benefit, you're looking backward at the buildings you saw before, so you can see what was there before. So you can see where is this? This is across the street. This is actually across the street from the drugstore and the vacant lot.
I'll buy a car off this guy.
This is just a matter of bringing up the retaining wall and putting nice stone on it, making it look better, putting in nice sidewalks, right? This already exists. These buildings are here already. This exists. Here we go. This is the drugstore. Put a little bit of touch on it. Bring it back into the stone. This building here is the very first building we saw where the arch was, right? So this is an apartment building, maybe 90-unit apartment building. Because once we build all this stuff, people are going to come to the town. They're going to want to live here. People from over the mountain are going to want to live here. People from New York City are going to want to come here, and they're going to want to take the train in New York City. This is going to become a very livable, walkable, vibrantly economic village, okay, that has a lot to offer. The culinary center, the entertainment center, all of these opportunities This on the corner of Easttown, turns into some sort of building that is an apartment building with retail on the first floor. Across the street, City Market, turn it into this. From this to this. Bank, turn it into a condominium zone. Print shop, the old house, turn that into an apartment building with retail on the bottom floor. That building, turn it into a community building as well. You see you walk down the street, see how it all develops, okay? So now that is the drive-in entry to your building. These buildings are what is going to pay the taxes that are capped in the state of New York, and your tax bills are all capped. Developers will pay the lion's share of the taxes. You'll have more money in your pocket when you go to all these new restaurants, stores, coffee shops, whatever it is that you've got in the parts store, jewelry store, whatever. Let's take a look at the north side. Okay, here's the north side. Let's turn this into something that looks like this. Thank you for asking that. So earlier in my presentation, I was talking about the parking meters that are on Main Street and how they're underutilized right now, and that we're going to be undergoing an initiative to make this a one-way street. We actually had an analysis done. You know the number, 221. We can put on this road 221 parking spots if it's a one-way street. Well, it just depends. So, like maybe something like this right here, this might be maybe 8 or 9 apartments. So maybe 9 people.
What about when it snows? Where is it going?
Yeah. So snowing is when this parking is used. The mayor is already reaching out in active conversations, talking to some folks about how we can have overflow courtesy in certain lots that West Point has. And we could actually, instead of using our own streets, we could use these underutilized parking lots so that way the streets at Highland Falls can get flat, rather than never using these parking spaces. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Oh, okay. The mayor's telling me he prefers that the questions get emailed in, if that's okay. Yeah. Well, only for the sake of time.
I said no questions.
Yeah, so on special events, we can call, the great tent, right? We work with the local police, both the Highland Falls Police and New York State Police, in order to change our one-way streets. It happens all the time. Funerals, all kinds of processions. The police work out all of that traffic.
So if you have 221 parking spots and you have all those residents, where's the parking going to be for all these people we want to utilize our business?
Yep. Let me answer that question. I'm going to show you what the actual impact is on the number of units that we can actually feasibly create. Okay.
Just one concern I have is what about water? Water, sewage?
Yep. So that question I'll also answer when we get to the actual, when you actually see how many apartment dwellings
We
this
didn't
actually.
show a new fire department, you still have to have that.
Yeah. So if you'll just allow me to get to the matrix, we'll address it.
They have a whole list.
Sure.
I got a whole list, so you go ahead.
All right, thank you. All right. This one here becomes a hotel. Going down the street a little bit further. Shades apart. Something like that. Dog farm. You want me to go back a little bit?
Yeah, go back.
So far back where we go. Okay. You can see that these buildings are not 60 feet, they're not 50 feet. In fact, we kept where this building right here, that was formerly where American Water was, because it's a beautiful building. It's already been renovated. It's been done first class. So it's a building that doesn't need to be renovated, it already is. Folks have already invested their money. So you can see that in this streetscape, these aren't 50-foot and 60-foot buildings, because the lots won't allow. Okay? Talk about employment, okay? So raise their hands before, and I think it was 12 people raised their hand and said they work here in the village. Just through 4 developments that are on the books right now. This is basically 96 plus 41, 137 jobs. So 137 new jobs just from 4 developments that you saw in what I just took you through. So we have an ability to get those who are unemployed or underemployed engaged into new employment opportunities, getting better pay, to be able to pay less taxes, to go out into this livable, walkable, work, live, play environment, to have a better quality of life. Okay? Where are those 4 locations? I have to go to the other thing, I'll show you in a second.
Did you say that the 71 new jobs?
Just on these, right now, 131.
131, so that's 131 of the 221 parking spots.
No, because these are jobs. These are jobs.
These people have to drive here though.
Yes, but most people in the village walk to work, actually. Believe it or not. A lot of people,
I live in the village, I don't know.
I can tell you firsthand that a lot of people in the village do walk to work. But nonetheless, we'll talk about the parking again because there will also be parking if things go perfectly the way the board is trying to position them. Then they're not only be parking on Main Street, they'll also be parking down on the highway as well, as I understand. So there'll be more parking on the other side of the median as well. Not to mention all the parking that's inside of the median. There's a lot of parking. Okay. Next one here is the opportunities. Okay? So I'll take you to this slide here. We get into your other questions that you have. We will then take you to this. Okay. So let's start on this. Okay, so what this is a chart of all of the lots that are along the B3 district along Main Street, from the Thayer gate, going all the way down to Main Street when we get downtown. We get Sushi King there, and we come to Main Street, so you know. We start here at the south gate, and then you just walk down the street, and these are all of the lots that are there. Okay? And what this does is shows you the dimensions of the lot and the total square footage of the lot.
Excuse me, what's the third line down say? I'm only kidding.
The house?
Nobody here could read any of that.
Oh, it says, sorry, thank you for reading that.
There you go.
Is that better for you?
Yeah.
All right, I just have to scroll back and forth. Okay, but anyway, it tells you what zone it's in, it tells you the lot size, dimensions, and the total square footage. It tells you how many apartments you can have if this density thing that we were talking about before, remember 2,500, 1,250, 850, whatever it is. It tells you how many you can have if it's 1,250, how many you can have if it's 850, how many you can have if it's 600. Okay? We've done it for every single lot. I'm not going to go through every lot, but I will tell you what the bottom line is. By the way, before I go to the bottom line, see all these lots that are in orange? All the lots that you see in orange are highly unlikely to be redeveloped. That means that there's either an existing business there that's highly likely to stay there, or it just wouldn't be developed. Is what the orange ones are. If you want to see what they are, I'm happy to take you through. But here's the net of where we are. So the difference between, and I use as the low bar for just to get the density. The whole idea, if you remember, is that we don't use any of these numbers, and we just allow the developers to determine how many units they want to put in their respective building, how tall they want to build their building, based on the current allowance of how tall they're allowed to build it. Okay? So the bottom line is that if the difference between 600 and 850 feet difference is 48 units, it's 48 dwelling units. And the difference between, if it were 1,200, is 85 dwelling units on Main Street. So that hopefully answers what we were saying before, how many units would it be? So 85. And then if you have the total impact of the whole area, total north and south increased units is 232 apartments. So to the water question, you talk about 232 families that are coming into the community that aren't here right now versus where we were headed. So it's not nearly what people think. It's like, well, if we create this opportunity to have these really, and the reason it is because the lots are so small, they don't allow for a lot of density, okay? If you look at this,
You have 232 families, an average of 2 children per family, that's 464 families in average school system.
464 peak children?
Children, not
Yeah.
school system.
Yeah.
I don't think our school system is getting
Well, there's an assumption in there that every one of them has 2 kids. And
on average, we're talking about apartment sizes of 4
and again, that's up to a developer will determine what size units they need to have based on the interest and what the demand is in the community and what type of units there are. So there's definitely going to become children, but with each child, you get a credit. The village gets a credit, if I'm not correct, is that right? The school gets credit from the state for the children to go to school, which brings more funds into the community to help expand the opportunities within the school.
That wasn't the experience of the wall, and that wasn't the school that we were your taxes to the school system are not managed, it's part of the state aid.
Yeah, I can't speak for Cornwall, I don't know anything about it, I apologize.
Just one question about that water now, you mentioned that. Here in Howland Falls, we do have issues sometimes with water. And a development like that, the water plant that we have, would the developer agree to enhancing our water plant without the taxpayers enhancing that?
Now, I can't speak for what the developers are going to do. It's going to take a lot of developers to come in and be able to do this.
So you're saying the taxpayers would have to enhance the water plant for the developers?
Yes. Of course, yeah. So what the mayor was saying is that any development, for instance, the Alta Bar right now, we're running all new main, all new water lines down, connecting into the main, all new sewer lines connecting into the main as part of the development. We do that for 2 reasons. Number one is because it's required, the building inspector. And then number 2 is you want to make sure that you don't have any issues in your building. You don't want to have backups, you don't have shortage of water, you want to make sure you got everything you need. If you got fire suppression, you want to draw the fire suppression, put out the lines right size. There's a whole bunch to it, as you know.
I understand that part, but again, I'm talking about the plant.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the sewer plant. I understand there's some things happening with the plant and with the water here in Highland Falls. I don't have all the details on it. I think many of them are positive, but I don't have any details to be able to answer the question. I apologize. What is?
School plan that have right now is half of what you got left in
Yeah, I don't know that to be true or not.
We'll build the envelope.
Yeah.
There's 1,200 additional sewer units that we can handle, and there's 1,200 additional water units that we can handle. And any problems with our sewer plant or our water plant, we can handle with a fee in lieu of. So we build up a fund that supports that water plant. We can continue to throw stones at this and have Main Street the same way for the last 50 years. So I think that what we need to do is think out of the box and find a solution, not throw stones at what we're doing, because, listen, look at Main Street, many of us have been here for 50 years. It hasn't changed for 50 years.
I don't think anybody's throwing stones. I think people are throwing fire.
All right, this
And
will be
again, I'll
back
say,
in.
I don't think anybody's
Bring it back into the
throwing stones.
presentation. I would greatly appreciate it because we are on a time limit. And Mick still.
How many reasons Harbor's going to be for senior citizens?
Sir, I'm going to move on.
Well,
You said- I have to give some time to Nick. I apologize. I appreciate you providing the courtesy and continue to go on. Okay, so I just wanted to point this out to everybody. And, you know, every lot is here. It tells you how many you built. Okay, we've taken members of the village board through this. They've seen it and they understand. I just wanted to at least let the community know that when you think, oh my God, we're going to be flooded with thousands of people coming in and we build 50 foot building to 60-foot building. It's certainly not the case because the lot sizes do not permit. All right. Thank you. Okay, so questions. If you still have questions, I'm going to turn it over to the AOG now. If you still have questions and didn't get answered, this is the address right there. This is the address where you can email your questions to. Happy to come back and answer questions as they come in and have another session with all the questions and be able to have the experts here who know about your water plant and your sewer plant and all of those things. We've got the village engineers here. We've got some other experts in the room that may be able to address some of those things. So, what I'd like to do now is introduce Mick Hauser from the West Point AOG. And Mick and the AOG have done some great work. They have made some significant investments into Main Street already to try and get some of these properties shovel ready. They have also done the program here, the Hudson Valley program, here at the middle school, providing afternoon care and providing meals to the kids after school. I'm not going to steal all this thunder, but you should really know what the West Point Association of Graduates is doing for Highland Falls. They're really reaching out and they're making a difference. Turn it over to him.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to be here. First, best respects to Senator Skoufis and Mr. Lucas. Thanks for being here. And for the mayor and the trustees for doing this. I think this is helpful and important. It's a really good opportunity for me to speak to you. I'm Mick Hauser. I'm at the Association of Graduates. I lead a group called the Initiatives Group. One of our biggest initiatives, maybe the most significant one, is the Hudson Valley program. I realize some of you guys know this, but I'm going to go over it anyhow a bit because I think it's important to understand, for instance, first of all, who AOG is, what the Association of Graduates is. Mr. Minicozzi's, we're a bit different, right? Mr. Minicozzi, a private investor. We're going to gather investors like him and others to invest in Highland Falls. A lot of them will be our own graduates. But we're similar in the fact that we're generally asking the village to reassess, reevaluate its not a surprise. A lot of things he went over affect us. I'm going to kind of drill down to another level. I'm going to really talk about one property, although I'll show you all the properties we own. I'm only going to talk about one, and I'm only going to talk about the B3 zone, and that's the Shades Park, that corner there. But first, it's important, I think, to understand what the Association of Graduates is. We're a nonprofit. I don't work for the superintendent. I'm not a GS. I don't work for the federal government. I work for the Army. I work for 56,000 graduates, right? And those graduates give their money to the association, and the association does what the graduates want. Now, the graduates tell us to be supportive of the superintendent, not surprisingly, as much as we can. But in the end, the grads get the vote. It's their money, right? And again, so you got 56,000 friends all over the world. You got 56,000 graduates. Some of them are here, at the head of your zoning board as a grad, right? Some are here. These are graduates who, they all know Highland Falls. Rudy Shade used to joke that they all know my menu, for instance, right, intimately, no matter where they are in the world. They've all been in town. Some of them married people from here. Some of them got in trouble here, whatever. Some came back and taught at the academy and lived in the village. A lot of their kids went to James I. O'Neill High School. So there's an affinity for Highland Falls, for this village, among 56,000 people that are all over the world. Some of those folks have money. Some of those folks are really successful. And I'm trying to leverage, I'm trying to get them to invest in this little community that they remember, okay? And get them to invest in maybe something that wouldn't be the return on investment they would normally go after, right? They would maybe go after for an investment something really high, but if we can put together something that's a bit smaller investment, they might do that because they care about the village. That's the idea that we have here anyhow. So a nonprofit means that, you step up here. Can you still hear me pretty well? Okay, so a nonprofit means that we can take money off of tax rolls, and nonprofits can do that. You know that. You've seen that in other parts of our county where it's a concern. I know, for instance, that the town had 92% of the town
Gotta use the mic.
So for instance, 92% of the town's property is off the tax rolls. This is West Point, the training areas, South Coast, the former Lady Cliff, churches, et cetera, et cetera. That's a real concern. We understand that. We're a nonprofit. We have taken nothing off the tax rolls. We have no intention to take anything off the tax rolls. We're paying taxes on properties we own, even though we're a nonprofit. So that rumor, if you've heard that, is not accurate. Our model is to the properties that we own, we want to use the rental income to roll into the Connect program. I'll talk about that in a minute. The Connect program is the educational after-school program that's run right here in this building. Why is AOG doing this? Our graduates told us to do it. Our graduates told us to do what we can to be a help in Highland Falls. We think we're better served to do that. I've heard a lot of things over the time I've been here. Superintendents at West Point come and go. They have the best of intentions. They really want to do good things. They get run over by other problems often. Garrison commanders, essentially the mayor of West Point, a full colonel, does the best they can, but they may move every 2 years. The Association of Graduates is a little different. We're more permanent. We can be there. You can yell at me 3 years from now. I'll still be here, hopefully, right? So there's more permanence there. There's a permanent face into the village. So we think we can provide that service not only to you as kind of a liaison back into the Garrison Command and other things, but for the superintendent as well. We can reach out in the community on behalf of the superintendent. And we're participating in a lot of things locally, like the Rotary. I think we're part of the energy behind getting the Chamber of Commerce back active, things like that. And we're talking to the village leadership. I think I've talked to every village trustee, certainly, about all this, about the zoning, excuse me. This is generally our strategy, okay? So what we said to ourselves is, we can come in and buy properties, fix them up, make them nicer, and that'll be a good thing. But we got to do something more holistically than that, right? We got to do something more for the community. And frankly, we got to overcome a bit of the goodwill that doesn't always exist for over the years. I know the history after World War I, land was taken, etc. I can't overcome that, but right now we're trying to overcome this by some goodwill into the community. So that's why we went into this, the Connect program and the education program, again here, and again I'll go into that. So that's our basis. We value Connect. We think we've been there 2 years now. We estimate that value to be about $2.2 million of value that we put in the community that's free, that's money from our graduates, that's money from this $56,000. It's no return on investment that's gone into this program. That's gone into the 58% of kids that are low income that are in this school right now that we're doing. So we think we're doing something that's pretty important. I appreciate that's nice, but the person I thank is Christine McDonald, who's here, who is a godsend in that respect. So the economic development on the right is what I'm going to talk about. But we also realize that, look, we own Shades and Park, right? For instance, we might get Shades and Park back up. We get a restaurant in there. The same folks, the demand there is still there. It's you guys, it's me. We're still there. If I get a restaurant there, the same folks will come back and they'll fill that restaurant. They didn't close, Shades and Park didn't close because they didn't have enough customers, okay? Rudy Shade and the Clozos closed for their own reasons. And yes, I see a question, I'm sorry.
What restaurant are you planning to put in place of Shades?
Excuse me?
What restaurant are you planning to put in place of Shades?
Let me explain that in a minute, okay? I think I'll show you in a moment. So we know the demand's still there for what existed before. But we know that as the village grows, it's going to need more than that, so we've got to bring visitors in. So at the same time, there's a lot of things going on that the Association of Graduates is doing, like trying to improve the visitor center, trying to get a ferry perhaps across the river into the marina area, trying to get control of that marina area a bit, get people up onto the main street, and things like that. So visitors are important. We got a lot of visitors that come in, go to West Point. We know they don't stop after they stop at, probably McDonald's, go in the coast and leave. We want them to have reasons to stop. We want them to stop. So we're trying to do two things at once. We're trying to help the folks that live here now and be a help in terms of visitors, and at least that's the intention. So this is the Connect program. I'll mention this real quick. So again, here in the intermediate school, we've done this for 2 years. This is free to all students in the school. It's going to be 2nd through 6th grade this year because the school board, you probably know, had to reconfigure a bit. It's open to all of them for free. It's 3 to 6 p.m. daily. We probably have 110 students a day. They come in, probably about 230 families that are registered. Probably a lot of you in here know that program. This isn't just daycare. This isn't just babysitting. These kids are doing some pretty neat stuff. We can bring graduates out and talk to them. We're bringing cadets into the community. Cadets are in here in the Connect program routinely doing robotics, shooting rockets, running around with football teams, things like that. And if you have any exposure to the Connect program, I think you would agree that it's pretty rewarding. If you haven't, come see us, come visit it when it cranks back up in September. We'd like to show it to you. So again, we want this to be the primary symbol of goodwill in the community. So you can judge the Association of Graduates for what it's worth, but I would submit to you that that's our attempt to prove to you that we're here for real, we're not going anywhere, and we're investing in the community at least a bit more than just flipping buildings or flipping houses. Now the economic development side of it, right? So at the bottom is a bit of a schematic of what we think a part of town looks like. So this is, you probably heard that. This is the building that Mr. Mincosi's going to build. That's shown a pretty good depiction of what that is. This is what we envision doing at the Shades Park corner. To some extent, we have a lot of different plans. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's generally what it looks like. We also own this building, which is between Gonfalon and the laundromat, etc. The first thing that happened will be Westie's, which will be a bar, restaurant, which will go into that house, 427 Main Street, down by, I guess, next to Dong Fong. Our model is, when we have a newer building like that, we'll lease it to a tenant, and we're going to help them build it out and make it what they need it to be. And then we think, again, because we're a nonprofit, we can do something a little different than most folks. We can stretch that payment out over time so that their lease allows them to be successful, right? So we want them to be successful. We're invested in it with them. So we'll lease that property to them at a lower level, and then over time we'll probably make up what we need to make up and move on. But that's it. So that and that lease money conceivably goes back in to fund the Connect program. If we do this right, it's completely self-sustaining. So that brings me to the goal overall is to buy properties and try to be strategic about buying properties. This isn't rocket science. If you were me, you would do the same thing. You would say, okay, if you're going to buy properties and try and fix them up, where's it going to have the most impact? Probably from Thayer Gate to Holy Innocents, right? That's the ones we focused on. We never envisioned Shades and Park coming open, but they did. How could we not purchase the two legacy historic properties in the most important part of town? We did. We want to develop them, and we would hope the zoning changes that allows us to develop them in a way we think could be really impactful. As a landlord, you know, we can help, and we can help people by giving them leases that are to their advantage. So two ways: when we buy a building that already exists, it's in really good shape, like 427, like I just mentioned. The other way is a model that we saw, that we looked at New Haven, that Yale does locally, and then Atlanta, that Georgia Tech does. In those communities, an anchor institution, namely the education institution, buys properties and then leases the property. So again, I'll drill down a little bit into the Shades Park corner. Our goal would be to, we'll show plans to potential investors. Most of them are among the 56,000 grads, right? Investors and developers, and say, here's what you could do with this half acre which is that Shades Park corner. Would you want to invest in that, right? And investors that would normally not even look at something if they can make 15% might do it at 8 or 10% if they're grads and they want to do something good for the community, right? So that's our hope. We're leveraging these folks that already have an affinity for Island Falls. So at that point, we're landowners, right? Leasing to someone who comes in, we put together a group of investors, we put together a developer to develop what they're gonna do there. We have control to make sure that what they put in there is quality work, right? That it's whatever, they put a restaurant in there, it makes sense in the broader scheme of the town. It's not a restaurant that competes with one next door, et cetera. We don't want to be cannibalizing each other's business, et cetera. We have the advantage of doing that because, again, we're a nonprofit and we can take on some of those things. So, again, the model here is Georgia Tech and New Haven. And if you've been to New Haven and Georgia Tech in that northern Atlanta area, you can see a lot of the work those folks have done there. Here's the properties we own right now. We own 7 properties. We've secured them in about the last 18 months. I'll start 216 Main Street is that empty grass lot between the post office, across the street from the town hall. Empty lot right now. We have not determined what we're going to do with that right now. That's in the B1 zone. Most of the things we have are in B2. On the left, 427 is one I just talked about. Again, we're going to have a restaurant going in there hopefully in March. You're going to see work starting to go on there. Planning board's already familiar with this. The Wests, Mark and Holly West, are the ones that are kind of the energy behind that. We own 8 Webb. It's that single standing house behind the Masons building. If you're not oriented, I can reorient it. Hopefully that's pretty clear. So the house that stands by itself. If you go by there, you'll see a lot of work going on there now. So we're rehabbing that building. On the upper right is this kind of concentration of 3 or 4 properties. Let me drill down on that a bit. So this is that Shades Park corner. This is 4 properties we own. 9 Drew, 5 Drew, Shades and Park. And the intention there is we probably have 8 different architects, renderings, engineering, renderings, etc. on what we think is possible to do with that Shades Park corner. It's about ½ an acre. And the constraint is some of the things Mr. Minicozzi talked about, like the 2,500, that's in that B3 zone. So our ask is that the village board reassesses its zoning so that we can do what we'd like to do. What we want to do is that, maybe 3 stories, restaurant, it's got to be a restaurant on the first floor, or retail. I think that's in keeping with what the town wants, and the people I've talked to think that's reasonable. We're not building a skyscraper. We have to meet the standards of zoning for parking, for setbacks, for easements, for landscaping, etc., for height, all that. We'll meet all that, and the hope is that when the zoning allows, we bring in some developers and investors. They go to the planning board and say, we're meeting that, we think all your standards, what do you think? And let the expertise of the planning board make a decision. So that's our model at the moment. So we suggest the village board, we suggest you just do away with the dwelling unit piece. I think that's confusing. We think it's confusing, it's unnecessarily detailed. Again, you could put a height restriction on there. You could put all those other requirements in terms of lot coverage and signage and setback and parking and all that. Just follow the mode of surrounding towns, which we haven't seen anybody that has this dwelling unit per square feet constraint. We'd suggest you kind of simplify the terms, make it more understandable, and then refine your other zoning requirements and put those requirements on us. And then in the end, overcome this challenge. And the challenge is this is what, actually Mr. Minicozzi brought it up before, that Shades Park site's about ½ an acre. The current zoning would allow 7 apartments. There's 14 there now, right? And so in nearby communities, the zoning would allow about 33 apartments. So we'd like to get to the point where, again, suggesting you empower your zoning board, you make it more clear at the village law level, or the village trustee law level, make it more clear, constrain the height, constrain the standoff, make us respect easements and all those other things, and then let developers who know a lot better than me, certainly, how to maximize that space, let them come in and show you what they can do. And they might be able to do things that are really unique in terms of environmental standards, about being more efficient with water and power and gas and things like that. Some of the questions that were raised, I don't have the answer for them, but quite frankly, You know, the water issue, for instance, Richie Sullivan has schooled me on the water issue, and made me even walk up to Meadow Bog, so I've seen that. I leave that to you. I'm not going to act like new development doesn't require more resources, but other villages do this, other towns do this, they do it pretty well. I'm pretty confident we can do the same. So, Association of Graduates is here, we think, to be helpful. If you're not confident that's the case, then I'm glad to talk to you more, and maybe try and show you why we think we're doing that. So given that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation.
So, the arrangement was with Peter as the board. Is anyone here from the planning board, zoning board, town board, village board, school board?
Yeah, Mr.
You
Chairman,
have
I've
any
got a question.
questions, you guys could go first. And this will not be the only opportunity. And again, use that email address for comments or questions.
Mr. Jenner, I had a question, I think.
I'd like to speak if I could. Can I come up and speak?
I'm not adjudicating this. Yeah, that's the mayor.
Yes.
Jack's on the zone, Jack's on the board. Where are you, Jack?
Are you here?
Yeah.
Come up to the microphone, Jack, please.
Okay, we'll politely stand by.
Jack, that microphone works if you want to use it. It's up to you.
All right. My name is Jack General. I am speaking as a concerned citizen, resident of the village. I've lived here for 26 years. My roots go back to 1947. This is my home. Yes, I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's my community service. I've been a member since 2008 and the chairman since 2016, so I'm very familiar with the zoning and all of these issues. I'm also a member of the AOG for the last 59 years, a graduate. Here's something that you don't know probably. I'm halfway through a 3-year term on the advisory committee to the Association of Graduates, the class advisory committee. My class president asked me to serve, and I said there could be possible conflicts of interest with my duties on the zoning board. And so I assured him if I was taking this position right, and there were conflicts with what the AOG is advocating and what I think is best for the community, I would always, my duty would be to side with the villagers in the town. I was also asked, a year and a half, 2 years ago, to serve on the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee, and I did that, and I'm very familiar with that, so I've got a background in it. Density keeps let me back up. Neither the town nor the village had zoning until 1971, when they both instituted zoning codes. If you have zoning, you must have a zoning board of appeals per the state law. So in 1996, the town and the village consolidated their 2 boards, and they will just have one. Consolidated zoning board of appeals for the town of Highlands and the village of Highland Falls. You heard talk about the 1 per 2,500, that's a density, that's a fraction, and how does a big number mean low density and a small number mean high density? Well, it's a fraction. 1 divided by 2,500 is much smaller than 1 divided by 1,250, which is even smaller, and then 1 divided by 850, which I've heard advocated, and I've heard 1 divided by 600. If you go to this higher density, there will be consequences. But before I get to that, let me talk about some other things that were said. You said your taxes are going to go down with all of this coming in. Well, I thoroughly disagree with that. High-density housing does not pay for itself. There's going to be more noise, more traffic, more litter, more garbage, more kids in school, more police because there's going to be more crime. And let's face it, if you have 2 lots equal size, one in the R district and one in the business district, in the R district they have, say, 20 apartments on it, and there's 4 people in each one of them, that's 80 people. Whereas in the residential district, a lot could have just a family of 4. So guess who gets to, when all these extra costs come out, guess who has to pay for it? You people in the residential district. It's not going to save you tons of money by having all of this development there. Something else to think about, and this is the real reason I'm standing here, is that the comprehensive plan goes into great detail talking about, and one of the things it got right, the draft comp plan, one of the things it got right was it established the character of the village. It stressed how important it was to maintain the character of the village. Now, Mr. Nicozi's had 4 years to put up a hotel. He hasn't. I don't know when he is or if he ever will. That's not the issue either. But what is the character of the village and are we going to protect it? Well, that's what the zoning code does. So if you go to high-density housing, and here's where we really get down to it. In the comp plan stresses that we are a small, beautiful village nestled on the hillside, mountainside in the Hudson River Valley. If you go to high-density housing, with all of these apartments, they will start filling up. Now, what's going to happen? You know in Orange County that there are small villages where targets of hostile takeover. You only have to go out Route 17 and you know what I'm talking about. If you vote for high-density housing, you will pretty soon find more and more voters living in the village who will vote out our current board. They only need 3 members, and then they will change the zoning code completely. And I said this before the public meeting, I'll say it again. That will be equivalent to signing the death warrant for our village as we know it. Let me repeat that. If we go to high-density housing with all of these apartments that you saw here, you will be signing the death warrant for our village as we know it. So you, the voters, let your voices be known. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Eric Smith, I'm the chairman. Get closer to the mic. Just got to get closer. Eric Smith, I'm chairman of the planning board. Like Jack, I've served a long time. Started on the town planning board in 2003, brand new resident of the village, and took over as chair in 2008. So I've been doing this a lot longer than any planning board member should. Right? I'm way beyond life expectancy. A lot of numbers thrown out today. What I'll say about that 2,500 number is it's a completely arbitrary number. You saw that up here. It does not represent the built environment. It came about after the built environment was there. The planning board has given actually 2 different, what I feel are good versions to the village board to work through, to kind of work on that. I understand the concern about development, but I'll just leave you with a couple of facts here. I do disagree. I would not call it high density housing. I've worked most of my adult life in Bronx, and I'm currently working in Harlem. That's high density housing. But the current population of the village, 36 and change, is down almost an exact 1,000 from its highest point in 1970. So 50 years ago, there was 20% more people living here. And that is what the infrastructure is doing. Sure, it's aged over that time, and sure, we need to do work on it. But we do need some people to help us pay for that. And I share many of the concerns Jack has. Don't take this the wrong way. It's 2 individuals to give themselves to the community that want the most for the community. But, I think the way to prevent those things that Jack fears is to have a a thriving community. A thriving community does not get taken. And I'm not endorsing what you heard up here or whatever. What I am endorsing is, you know, for local boards, whether it be planning, zoning, or that, work together to find something that works for this village. 2,500, completely arbitrary. As you saw, if Shades, you know, if we had to redevelop Shades under that 2,500 for me to do it. I did quick calculations. I remember when we first started on the built environment in B3 is at least twice that 2,500. So just for that, I don't think the point of tonight is to fully go through that. There's proposals out there. There will be public hearings. The boards will comment on it. But the answers are in this room. And I think if we have a good dialogue, we respect every party's opinion, we can get to the spot where we need to be. So I'll leave it with that. I do have to go upstate. I think it's great that we have this many people in the room because it does show we care. So thank you.
I know a lot of people have questions, so I'm very brief. I'm Melanie Guerrero. I'm a village trustee, and for the past 3 years, I've consistently shown my support for responsible development. And I've been on the board 3.5 years.
I don't think the microphone is on, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I have almost, but be kissing. Okay, so I've been for development for the past 3.5 years. I've been on the board. And after decades, this is what I'm going to say, after decades of economic decline, just like Eric said, right, and deteriorating infrastructure caused by restrictive zoning and building regulations, we now really stand in a pivotal moment, right? Okay, with the AOG and the Thayer group ready to invest millions in our village, we really have a unique opportunity to revitalize Main Street, to boost tourism, to stimulate economic growth, and create jobs. So we really cannot afford to let this opportunity slip.
No, I'm just putting up a slide for her.
My name is Jim Tilo. Maybe you hear me? From Mount Avenue. First of all, you should know that Eric Smith, Eddie Dunn, Mr. Green, Mr. Johnson have been on the planning board for 20 plus years. They have served this community for 20 plus years. Jack Janner and his team, many of them have been there also. And what we get paid from this community is $300 for the year. I know Eddie's more than that. Eddie spends 3 or 4 hours a month doing work related to this planning board. So anyway, I just want you to know that there's people in this community that devote their energy, and Jack is one of them, that devote their energy to making this a better place. But I'm going to disagree with Jack. I'm going to disagree with my friend Jack Janner. I was part of the comprehensive plan also, okay? There was many people. Eddie Dunn was a part of that comprehensive plan. One of my complaints is that we made recommendations to this village, and I have to talk to you about the state also, sorry. We made recommendations to this village to make some changes. That was January 27th, 2024. Almost 9 months ago. 9 months ago. Now I know the wheels of government turn really, really slow, but it's really ridiculous, and it exhausts people's energy, and then they just throw up their hands. They say, I don't give a shit anymore. So I'm going to talk about Jack's comments. Density. There's no such thing as high density in our community. People use this word to scare other people. There's no such thing as high density. What these developers are talking about is changing from 7 units to 14 units. It's pretty ridiculous. High density is 3 or 4 or 1,000 units on a small piece of property. Taxes. When valued correctly, that commercial development will generate more taxes and reduce the taxes for the homeowner. Jack, I mean, I don't know where you get your numbers, but I work for people who do this every day. So there's no question. And that skit there identified the fact that if it's valued at $2 or $3 or $20 million, it generates taxes for this community. So I'm not sure about that, Jack. Draft comprehensive plan. Draft comprehensive plan. The character of our village. Character of our village, right? 1 second, I took some notes. Character of our village. Maybe 50 years ago, character. Today, there's no character. Okay? We have 4 pizzerias, 3 hair cutting places, 2 places that sell drugs that Joe shut down, thank God. If Kenny was here, he'd be shut down a long time ago. And a bunch of empty lots and empty storefront. Character? Are we worried about character? I mean, I don't understand. I'm missing something. We want to preserve the character of our village. We have no character in this village. We have empty lots, empty storefronts, people who want to spend money on the facade. Many years ago, Joe put me in charge of grants from the state to, it was a 50 matching grant, to paint your buildings, to do something related to Main Street. One person took advantage of that grant. I walked up and down Main Street 20 times. Nobody would take that. So that's what we have. That's the character we're worried about. Parking. I heard someone mention snow parking for snow events. We are planning for a snow event that may never happen. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've not had a snow event, and we are forcing these developers, in the event of a snow event, 7, 5, 8, 10 years from now, we want to make sure we're protected. We want to make sure that we have ample parking. Well, Rick and Mayor Joe, Mr. Manicosi and Mayor Joe have spoken about some opportunities on West Point property that maybe we can have overflow parking. This timing is very important, timing. When you see this development on Main Street, this is not going to happen tomorrow. This is not going to happen in 2 years from now. This is not going to happen 10 years from now, right? 10 years. Perhaps, maybe, 10 years we'll start to see streetscapes. Maybe 2 or 3, 4, 5 buildings will happen. That'll be a good thing. So, we're worried about what's going to happen today or tomorrow. These things don't happen overnight. These things take time. So, the decisions that this board makes is for 20 years from now, not today. So, we need you to make the important decisions.
Should have happened 20 years ago.
Should have happened 20 years ago, exactly. Timing, not overnight. Here's what's best about this. Whatever the plan, whatever the village board decides, like I said before, everything has to come through us, the planning board. Eddie, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Green, Mr. Smith, they've been here for a long time. Everything goes through those. We identify whether our concerns are for the village, for safety, for fire, and they address them. So, here's the best part. Nothing we do today is written in stone. This is not something that we're going to cut our hand and put a blood mark on and say, that's where it stays, okay? Unfortunately for us, for the last 50 years, that's where it has stayed. It has stayed there. And Main Street is the perfect example of why that it should have been addressed 10, 20 years ago, okay? So, in 2 years, we're going to evaluate this. Next month, we could evaluate this, these decisions, and they can be changed. We're going to ask for advice from our engineer, from our council, from other people. We paid, all of us paid, $65,000 for a consultant to say, this is what I recommend. And then, I look at this, which is printed on by 17, but this is what the current board is looking at now. None of this represents what we paid $65,000 for. So, but this is a step, this is the first step. Mr. DiZalpo said to me that we need to put something on paper. So he put something on paper. I'm going to mention a few things. What is this? This is a amending the zoning law of the Village of Highland Falls. This is a start. It's on the website. There you go, right? Okay. So this says, first of all, we have spoken about the commercial zone to be 50 feet. Now that's a complicated number, right? But I see here it's 40 feet. B1 and B2 is 40 feet. Your houses are 35 feet. The top of your roofs are 35 feet. Who is going to come in here and develop a commercial building with a height of 40 feet? I don't know who came up with that number. And here's the bonus. You get a 5-foot bonus. You get a half of a floor bonus if you meet certain criteria. Now I come down to the 2,500 and the 1,200, the 1,250. And I spoke to the board a number of months ago. If Marchese sold a pickup truck for $1 million, nobody would buy it. If Marchese cut that number in half to $500,000, nobody would buy it. If Marchese cut that number in half again to $250,000, nobody would buy it. My point is that a ridiculous number to start only creates more confusion. So right now the board is considering 1,250. 1,250 square feet per unit. No, this is per dwelling unit in the building, okay? This is why this is ridiculous, okay? And somebody said it up here, that no other community has this. We have a height restriction. We have a box restriction, right? Inside that box is community space, is hallways, is elevator space, is everything. What remains is what a developer can use to build on, right? Mr. Manicozzi identified the fact that they're going to have a marketing study. Also, Mr. Halbert, a marketing study. None of us are smart enough to identify you need 2 1-bedrooms, 6 2-bedrooms, 4 3-bedrooms, and 2 studios. None of us are smart enough to do that. But they will. A marketing company will be able to do that. Identify the needs, and that will be transmitted into a set of drawings that identifies how many 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, 3-bedrooms. Now, some of you could say that me as a developer, Jim Tito, I'm going to tell my architect, you put as many units in that as possible, right? I mean, that would benefit me. Here's what's going to happen. The planning board's going to see 51-bedroom units. We're going to say, that really doesn't make sense. But even more, Mr. DiSalvo knows that his bank appraisers, not appraisers, your loan officer, but there's a whole group that does these evaluations. They're gonna say, we're not gonna loan you money if you're gonna build 51 bedroom units because you have moved away from the entire market. So the market comprises of studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. Okay? So no developer is going to be able to come in here and borrow money from the bank unless they have a marketing plan, and that marketing plan identifies the apartment mix. The apartment mix. One thing that we don't have, Mayor Joe, is an identified square footage for 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, or even studios. Now the town does, the town has a great summary. We should simply adopt that town summary. So, I'm going to save everybody a headache because I've been talking about this for a long time. I can't understand how I have this document that I presented on, here's my summary. 4 pizzerias, 2 tattoo parlors, 2 pot shops, 2 hardware stores, 2 restaurants, and 15 to 20 empty stores or lots. So anyway, I did this on 1/27/24. I thought I was presenting to the board. I realize now that it's too much for them to handle when I see something like this. So I'm going to make a recommendation, Joe, that you hand it over to the planning board and let us do the work. This is what we do for a living. This is what we know how to do. So you guys can't get there. It's ridiculous the numbers that you're coming up with. So please hand this over to the planning board. Ask us to make recommendations. And I have to. And this is for Mr. Susan, right? Prior to the natural disaster, right? We very rarely see it.
Let's get it, Thayer.
Okay? As much as we put sidewalks from our old bowling alley to Montreal Park, you don't know those areas? But we had to pay for that. We, the community, had to pay for it. West Point is the second largest tourist opportunity in the state of West Point. That is the main entrance service. And we have to beg the state to fix up that roadway, to fix up the sidewalks, to put trees along the side. I talked to Mayor Joe about this, because we are paying for those sidewalks. We are going to pay for the next 100 feet. Okay, I'm sorry.
So we're past our.
Jim DeSalvo, member of the village board. I wasn't going to say anything, but since my good friend Mr. Tito mentioned my name a couple times, I figured I'd get up. A couple quick things. 2 smoke shops in town, just heard that real quick. It's not my fault New York State legalized marijuana. Every town has smoke shops. Talk about density. Everything is relative. And my good friend Mr. Tilo, he's a builder, so naturally he likes to build. Everything is relative. 250 apartments, do the math. I'm not against density, I'm not against development, but I can't take a dive into the deep end without knowing what's down the road a little bit, even if it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years away. And you cannot lose the fact of looking at Orange County, and there are only certain communities in Orange County that are looking to develop this much density. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen here. I do not like to use scare tactics. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But my point is that you have to look at what the gentleman said. What will happen to the school if you have 250 kids coming in? It doesn't have to be 500. It could be 200. Let's ask the school board. If 200 new kids came into the community tomorrow, what happens? Where are they going to go? Will the classroom sizes be okay? Will we have to hire 5 more teachers? Will it affect their budget? I don't think it's wrong to say that.
And I don't think it's wrong that if it's going to take potentially 10 years to build some of these buildings, that we take a little time to look at it, even if it did start in January. Other things are going on in this community besides just working on this program and these plans and these zoning changes. And the start point that we have in front of us right now is dramatically different than what we have on the books now. It's dramatically different than what we have on the books now. And if it was in place right now, those numbers that we had, 45 feet, again, a starting point, what was mentioned in the slides tonight, we were told it's not any more than 30 or 40 feet. So then 45 is right in the wheelhouse. And if you had 1,250 square feet, a lot of these apartments could be built. And oh, by the way, in the law, we're offering a grandfather clause. What's a grandfather clause? Meaning if you bought shades now, and you have 12 apartments in there now, or you have 14, and you knock the building down, you could have put a lease back the 14 that you had. So, a little credit. We're working on it. We have a little more time to do with it. We wanted some public input. It's important to see the presentation. The pictures look fantastic. I think the board as a whole, the mantra is that we want to see development on Main Street. I'm 44. Luckily, I'm still one of the youngest members on any of the boards. Started when I was 22. So I've seen the community grow over the last 22 years, and it's changed. It has changed. It's going to change in another 22 years. So yes, we want the development. We want to generate new tax dollars if we can, keeping in mind the expenses they may bring. But it's not something that we should rush right into either. I understand it's taking us some time. It's probably going to take us some more time. And I think it's important that we get the public's input. Thank you.
I paid for this auditorium tonight, X amount of dollars. To be out of here by 7.
We think, oh, come on.
No, I paid.
I want to put my camera on.
You paid? And then they got double paid. No, I wrote a personal check out. Sorry. Don't tell my wife. But we're ahead, we're 30 minutes past the time we're allotted. We've got a custodian standing out here who hasn't come in yet. Mr. Remus wants to speak. I'm imploring you to make it extremely short. Not short, extremely short. He's standing there with me. It's not right to do that to me. No way.
Good evening, everybody. I'm sure you know me. I'm sure I have enough of you here. Mr. DeSalvo made some good points. There's a lot of good things we heard here in the room tonight. But the draft of the proposed zoning needs to be read by you. That draft is a draft. We're working on it. What it does do is this density, 2,500 square feet of lot area per unit that you can build, we're proposing at the moment to make it 1,250. That doubles what would be allowed now. And we're going to eliminate the B3 in this draft for the moment and create it back to the B1 district. The B1 district right now, or when we go back to it, has 23.4 acres of land in the B1 district. And it's not unheard of where developers come in and buy multiple parcels, tear it down, and they can build something bigger and better for our community. Fantastic. But at that number, 23 acres of land, it equates to possibly 1,200 more apartments. 1,200 more apartments, how much water do we need for those? Now, let's look at both sides, because right now there are some apartments there, and they do use water, so we have to do the math on that as well. But that's a lot more apartments. We have a watershed that can probably produce a lot of water, but we have a water plant that can only produce a certain amount of water. Our sewer plant, our speedies permit, can do at least 1.2 million gallons a day. We don't have a problem with the sewer plant. We have a problem with the sewer lines that we just spent as the village board, $72,000 of your money to fix a problem. So these are some of the things that we just have to look at. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. If anybody really wants some other numbers about water and the calculations on how many apartments that we could do based on 600, 850, no number, 1250, come see me. I can give you some actual numbers that I got from the Orange County Planning back in 2015. So, you all know me, come on down.
Thank you very much. I'd like to do this again. It's nice to get everybody